Welcome to Modern Tactical Shooting. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my normal studio. I'm on the road right now, but I think I have a first for YouTube right now, and that is a review of this Russian optic right here. This is a 1P86-1, not to be confused with a 1P86, which comes standard on the ASM Val and the VSSM rifle. Both are internally suppressed rifles in a 9x39 cartridge, which have been out for about the last 20 years or so. This is a 1P86-1, which as far as I can tell is the new or upgraded model of that 1 or 4 variable power optic. So let's get into this optic right here. Interesting side note, how I actually got my hands on this optic. A fan of my channel contacted me and said, hey, do you want to try out this 1P86-1 and a 1P87, which of course is basically a Russian version of an EOTech. And I was like, okay, sure, let me try these out. I don't know anything about Russian optics at all. And the way this person got these optics, and I'm just speculating here, but I think he got them the real way, which is from Russian soldiers that didn't need them anymore. So I've spent the last roughly month and a half putting some rounds to this optic right here. I've been using it on my Zastava M90 the entire time. Now it is mounted to the rifle via the Zastava or Zastava mount, which is actually UTG, which might have caused an issue, which I'll get into here in a little bit. But as you can see, to get proper eye relief, I have a Zhukov stock, and I did have to use Magpul's highest riser when it comes to the Zhukov stock, so good cheek to stock. You can tell this is not a 1P86 just by the mount. This has a raised mount, kind of like it was designed to be maybe 1/3 co-witness, maybe not for an AK, maybe for a different style rifle. The original 1P86, if you look at this photo, sits almost flush to the rifle itself. So this does have some height to it. But let's get into basically what makes up this optic right here. Now on the left-hand side, you can see we have a battery cap for 1 AA battery. Underneath that is the 1 to 4 throw lever, just like an Elcan. And above that is the brightness knob for the reticle. Now coming around here on the right side, we have our windage and elevation. As far as you can tell, those are 1 minute of angle increments. Now these markings on top, from everything I've seen, these markings are totally legitimate, and this is an authentic scope. First up, as per the manual, I'm going to zero it at 100 yards, point of aim, point of impact. Now this has an etched reticle with a BDC, and as far as build quality, I gotta say this is actually pretty nice. Eye relief is actually not too bad. If you look at this video clip of me rocking my Trujicon VCOG, it's pretty comparable. Of course, the VCOG's in 1:6. The field of view is not too bad. Now, it does not match the field of view that comes with an Elcan, but I gotta say the quality is pretty good. The glass is very clear. It's not wavy. It's very bright. So I'd say great quality glass in the optic itself. So build quality definitely is pretty good. All right, looking at the reticle, as best I could do with my camera, we have our center chevron. The tip of that is 100 meters. The bottom of the chevron is 300. And then you have markings for 4, 6, all the way down to 8. There's actually markings in between. You have a windage scale, and off to the right is your height of man rangefinder based on a meter. Here's a better photo of everything right here. Now I'm going to take it to the range. I'm going to shoot it out to 300, just messing around on some steel plates. First up is 200-yard line, 8-inch steel plates. Now, any misses that I do have, I'm going to blame me. I just haven't hit the range enough for long-range shooting. And too much run and gun in 2-gun matches. But this does fairly well considering the ammo I'm using and just really my lack of practice. I don't blame the scope. I'm going to take it out to 300 yards now on a popper. It's about 14 inches wide at its widest spot. And really, I'm just out of practice. I take 7 shots here, and you're going to see I only hit half of them. I really need to get the optic in the hands of Henry over at 9 Hole Reviews. I think he could do a much better job running and gunning with this scope than I do. I'm going to blame me. I had no problem getting on target. It's just breaking a clean shot to get a good hit with the wind and everything ahead of me. But yeah, it works pretty well. Now here is me just messing around. I'm shooting 100-yard steel, standing, of course, and I've got it on full power, just playing around. Woo, there's a good run. And a little 827 just for fun. All right, 3 steel plates at about 35 yards. I got this on 1 power now. Let's just play around, see how well it does on 1 power. Surprisingly, not too bad. And I'm 1 for 1 so far. All right, let me bust out the Pro Timer. All right, 3 steel for time, 1 shot each. That's a 297. Let's do it again. And 323. Let's do 1 more just for the heck of it. Woo! 252. Not too bad. 35-yard steel, 1 shot each on 3 steel. All right, now just to compare it to something that 1P86-1, let's compare it to my 40-year-old Elbit Falcon Mark I red dot. Again, 3 steel, about 35 yards, 1 shot each. Let's do it. That's a 286. .244. Let's do 1 more. Don't know if I was clean that run, but 285. So I think this optic came out a few years right before the conflict started, making it super rare. Obviously, these have made their way into Ukraine to be used. But I think when it comes to all the Russian gear as a whole, it looks like they've used up all their fancy gear, all their Ratnik items from their upgrade program. They used everything up in the first few months of the war. You can find photos of ASM VALs and VSSM rifles taken from Ukrainians, photos they posted, but that was early on in the war, and really you don't see anything but AK-74s with iron sights and AK-47s in the hand of Russian soldiers. So I think they've used up all their good optics, all their good rifles. I think this came out just before the war, and I don't think there is even that many in their service. And of course, Russia has a huge black market problem. They've always had that. Prior to the war in Ukraine, when they were trouting their whole Ratnik program, you could find tons and tons of Ratnik items on eBay and other places for sale because they're just selling all that stuff. So you could get all sorts of cool stuff online. Just looking around online right now, you can find 1P87s on our eBay for about $2 grand. And when I first got this optic, I was doing a deep dive online to find as much information as I could, and the only thing I've found is a posting basically on a Russian version of Craigslist or eBay. Somebody was selling one for about $500 US equivalent. Seeing how the cost of a real Russian 1P87 is about $2,000, I can only imagine what the price of this stateside would be if it's truly one of the few that's made its way over here to the US. Because again, I think the few that maybe the Russian army had, they've all been used up in the conflict. And that's why there's very little information out there about this 1P86-1. And I think either it's a upgraded version of the 1P86 meant to replace it, or maybe it's an export only model that they're playing with. And a lot of militaries do that. They'll make one version of an item and then they'll make an export version. For instance, if you are familiar with my channel, you know I'm a huge fan of Israeli Elbit Falcons. Well, the original Elbit Falcon Mark I was for the IDF only, and then later in the 90s they came out with the Mark II, and that was a civilian export item, red dot only. So maybe this is either an upgraded version or is meant for export, or maybe it's meant for a completely different weapon system other than the ASM VAL and the VSSM. I can only speculate and guess what the intended use of this is. Again, I think I'm the first for YouTube showing off this variable power optic. Now, when I first got this, as I mentioned, I zeroed it at 100 yards. And over the period about a month and a half, I've been pumping rounds through this thing. And when I went to go re-verify the zero had shifted. The point of impact had shifted about 3 inches to the right and up. Now, I can't say it's the scope's fault. I don't know if this is the defective scope because it is on this UTG side mount, which is really not the greatest quality. Also, I did zero this with my favorite ammo, which is PMC X-Tac 55 grain. And when I went to go re-zero, I didn't have any on hand. And I was using a completely different kind of generic brand of ammo. But really, even if you change ammo, usually that just changes elevation, maybe about 1 minute of angle due to the change in velocity or bullet weight. I was still shooting 55 grain. So I think the shift in the zero, again, I can't say it's a scope, could actually just be the mount. Because in between all my range sessions, I would literally just yeet this into the back of my truck while I was driving to different ranges and it getting bounced around. So the jury's not out yet if this scope can hold a good zero. When I did zero it, and as you did, you saw the results of my shooting. Again, it really wasn't the scope fault. It's my fault. I need to up my long range game. It worked just fine, and it did hold a good zero. So again, the jury's not out. I think the true test, I need to take this optic. I need to mount it on an AR-15 to take the mount totally out of the equation. I need to zero it up and then bang it around on an AR a little bit and see if it holds zero. Because again, I think it's a good chance. The reason why the zero shifted could just be the crappy mount, honestly, that I'm using. Now, things I don't like about this optic, it does not have a red center dot like an American Elcan. When you light up the reticle, the entire reticle lights up. So I would prefer a center red dot for 1-power and speed shooting. And I thought shooting this on 1-power with its thin reticle line BDC, it would hold me back, but you know, it did fairly well speed shooting on 1-power. So I really can't complain there. Now, the big question is, what do I think of this as a whole? And really, let's put it in the context of, let's say I got assigned to, guess what, Jeff, you're going into Ukraine, and this is going to be the only optic you're going to be issued. How would I feel about that? Well, as long as this holds zero, which again, it could just be the mount that I'm using, this is a pretty good optic, and I would not feel really held back if this was all I had for an optic on my rifle. It works. It's actually, I'm kind of impressed with it. Again, I'm not very knowledgeable of Russian optics, but this appears to be very good quality, and it does work. Is it as good as a Elcan Specter DR in 1:4? Well, it has a narrower field of view, doesn't have a center red dot reticle, and really 1:4 powers are a little out of date now. But for what it is, it does work well. And yeah, if this is all I had going into combat, again, I wouldn't feel that held back at all. But as always, hopefully you found this video really entertaining and informative. As always, I'm Jeff Gerwich. Now, I will be doing a video on the 1P87. I just need to get some rounds through it. Look for that video in about a month or so. And thanks for watching.